a simple late-night test hit turned into the moment that exposed a rivalry no one on the Street Outlaws crew ever expected. It happened on an empty stretch just outside the city, where only a few racers and their closest crew had gathered to fine-tune their setups before an upcoming race night. The darkness, the quiet, and the lack of cameras made it the perfect time to test, and the perfect time for hidden tensions to surface. The night started off calm enough. Everyone assumed they were there for a routine shakedown, nothing more. But the mood shifted the second two specific racers arrived. They didn't pull in together, didn't look at each other, and didn't exchange the usual jokes you'd expect from guys who've known each other for years. Instead, they acted like two people who were forced into the same room even though they'd rather be anywhere else. At first, nobody thought much of it. Racers get stressed before big races all the time. But something about the cold silence between these two felt different. Before the first test run even happened, the tension started to show. While one racer's crew was adjusting the suspension, the other walked by and made a comment about how the setup looked a little desperate. It was said quietly, but loud enough to be heard. The reply came just as sharp, better desperate than slow. And just like that, the air changed. Crew members stood still, pretending to be busy but clearly listening. It wasn't normal trash talk, not the playful banter fans know. It had weight to it, the kind that only comes from something that's been unresolved for a long time. When the first test hit began, everyone stepped back. Engines roared, headlights cut through the darkness, and for a moment it looked like everything would settle. But halfway down the road, something went wrong. One of the cars drifted just slightly, lost a bit of traction, and the driver had to shift to keep it straight. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to spark the explosion that had been waiting all night. Before the car even rolled to a stop, the other racer shouted that the prep was wrong, that the driver didn't know how to handle the car, and that the whole hit was a waste of everyone's time. What followed wasn't yelling for the cameras or the usual heat-of-the-moment frustration. This was personal. Years of holding back finally broke through in a few short seconds. The driver fired back, accusing the other racer of always trying to undermine him, always pointing out flaws instead of improving his own performance. It shocked even their closest friends. No one knew this went beyond normal competition. This was something deeper, quieter, and far older than a single test hit gone wrong. That was when the comment slipped, the one that exposed everything. In a low, irritated voice, one racer muttered, "This is exactly why I never trust him around my car." Those words landed harder than any argument. You could feel the entire mood shift instantly. Crew members froze. Nobody joked. Nobody laughed. They all knew what that meant. This wasn't a rivalry born overnight. This was something that had been growing for seasons, hidden behind edited episode cuts, polite interviews, and forced team photos. Behind the scenes, the story made even more sense. These two racers had been competing for the same spots on the list for years. They'd traded wins, traded losses, and traded opportunities. Rumors quietly floated around production that one believed the other got more screen time, while the other felt he wasn't getting the respect he deserved from the 405. Each time a new episode aired, fans noticed tiny moments, a cold look, a distant handshake, a comment that didn't feel entirely friendly, but no one ever connected them. Not until that night. After the test hit, the divide between them only grew. They didn't ride back to the shop together. They didn't speak another word. They didn't even stand in the same circle when the crew regrouped to discuss the run. Instead, they packed their tools with the kind of quiet anger that tells you the conversation isn't over, just paused. By sunrise, the story had already reached the rest of the Outlaws. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone wondered the same thing. If a rivalry like this had been simmering in the background for so long, what would happen the next time they met on race night? The next episodes filmed after that night suddenly made more sense to those who were paying attention. Scenes where the two racers barely looked at each other. Moments where they avoided standing next to one another during lineups. Subtle changes in their tone that fans wrote off as normal pressure. But pressure doesn't change the way two people act around each other. Rivalry does. And this one was starting to affect the way the crew worked, the way alliances formed, and the way decisions were made. Some racers quietly started taking sides. Not openly. Nobody wanted drama that would slow down racing, but in small ways that only insiders noticed. Who stood next to who helped who load up, who gave tuning advice, and who stopped giving it. Even the producers had to adjust how they filmed certain scenes, because the energy between the two racers was noticeably colder. What began as a private moment during a secret test hit was now shaping the dynamic of the entire team. And the scariest part? This rivalry wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. With every race night, every list shakeup, and every win or loss, the gap between the two men grew wider. Some believe it's only a matter of time before it boils over again, but this time in front of the cameras. Others think it could lead to a major shakeup, maybe even changing who stays at the top of the street for good. In the end, that late-night test run revealed something the show had never fully exposed. It wasn't just about the cars or the performance. It was about pride, history, frustration, and two racers whose paths have collided for too many seasons to count. A simple test hit, done in the dark where nobody was supposed to notice, ended up uncovering the truth. The most intense rivalries aren't always the ones we see on race night. Sometimes, they're the ones that explode when no one is watching. And now that the secret is out, everyone is waiting to see which one of them makes the next move, and which one gets pushed out of the way. But the story didn't end with that night. In the days that followed, both racers tried to pretend nothing had happened, but the crews could feel the shift. Conversations that used to include everyone now broke off into smaller groups. People whispered more, questions got shorter. Even routine tasks like checking tire pressure or reviewing data logs suddenly carried a strange heaviness, as if everyone was waiting for something else to snap. It wasn't anger, not yet, it was anticipation. And anticipation on the street is more dangerous than anything. One of the racers started testing without letting the other know, choosing different nights, different streets, and even a different set of helpers. That might not sound unusual, but in the Outlaws world, separating yourself from the team is a quiet statement. It says you don't want certain eyes on your car or on your progress. And while nobody called it out directly, people noticed. The other racer noticed too, and didn't appreciate being left out of something that used to be a shared routine among the group. Producers later admitted they had to rethink how they scheduled filming because the attitude between the two racers was affecting entire scenes. During group meetings, the two men positioned themselves farther apart. During race nights, they avoided eye contact completely, even when discussing lane choice or callouts. On camera, it still looked professional. But in person, everyone felt the divide widening. And the craziest part? Viewers at home never realized they were watching episodes filmed after one of the biggest turning points in the crew's history. The tension even affected how other drivers planned their races. Some avoided calling out either of them, not wanting to get caught in the middle of a feud that could explode at any moment. Others saw an opportunity. If the two rivals were too distracted by each other, someone else could climb the list before they even realized what was happening. Internal conflict on the street doesn't just create drama, it creates vulnerability. And in racing, vulnerability is an open invitation. What no one expected was how the rivalry started bleeding into performance. The racer who drifted during the test run became more cautious, double-checking every detail but also second-guessing himself more than usual. The other racer, fueled by frustration, pushed harder than ever but began making small mistakes during tuning sessions, rushing adjustments, ignoring advice, and brushing off suggestions that normally would have helped him. It became clear that the rivalry wasn't just emotional, it was starting to cost them time, precision, and maybe even wins. People inside the 405 began talking about the possibility that one of them might eventually step away from the main group if things didn't improve, not officially leave the show, just distance himself, join smaller crews, or focus on personal projects. That's how deeply the divide was being felt. A single late-night test hit had created a fracture big enough to shake the foundation of relationships built over years of racing, wrenching, and surviving the toughest callouts in the country. And the scariest thought lingering over everyone was simple: if this was what happened off camera, what would happen the next time the cameras were rolling? The stakes were high, and neither racer was willing to back down. Rivalries on the street don't fade quietly. They build, they twist, and they explode when the pressure becomes too much. And this one, born in the dark when no one was supposed to notice, was heading straight toward impact.